Hey guys, Board now back with you for this week's Mare of Easttown review. So this is going to be episode 5. It is called Illusions. Full spoilers, as always from the start. And what a massive episode this one is. We really get going on some things. Sets quite a few ideas up and leaves them hanging. So a lot of intrigue. Not quite sure where it's going in some ways, but we certainly get to the heart of at least one side of the plot, and that is the kidnapping plot, which we ended with last week. The big reveal that Katie is still alive and being held in this place, and that Missy, now the girl who was abducted last week, has also been left at that place. So I guess at that point it raised the question. Erin's dead, of course, but was she killed by the same person who's like kidnapping these girls? But I think I came to the conclusion, and the answer to that is no. By the end of this episode, I definitely feel that it's a different person who's committed the two crimes. But yeah, certainly a dramatic end of the episode, which I'll talk more about at the end. I'll build to the stuff with Mare and Colin because that's some big stuff at the end. But there's certainly some meaty like subplots going on in this episode. So I'll talk about a couple of them. First of all, the episode actually opens with an electric like blackout across the town, which I like because it's like this link between the whole town, and we see how the various characters like react to it, and see Mare's family, for example. But it sort of leads to quite a crucial plot detail because Mare's friend, I forget the character's name, but the one played by Julia Nicholson, we see her kind of when she's, in the dark and stuff, she comes across and hears a conversation between her husband and her son, a weird like conversation which is sort of suspicious, and he's the husband is saying, "Relax, it'll just be our little secret. Let's keep it between us." So that obviously gets her mind racing to what exactly. And later on, there's an incident at his school where this handicapped girl, this mentally handicapped girl, is picked on by a group of bullies. One bully in particular in the cafeteria. Now, one thing I'll say about that scene actually is that I thought it was quite refreshing, and what I mean by that is it was actually quite nice that the rest of the kids didn't join in bullying her and laughing, because so often in these scenes in TV and movies they really play it up where she's being like a laughing stock by everyone, and I think they just go to extremes sometimes. Oh, aren't these kids awful and this terrible thing, whereas in reality I think, yeah, sure, kids can be like horrible sometimes and immature, but I think especially in this situation where it's like, a mentally challenged kid and she's sort of very much helpless and the victim, I think a lot of them wouldn't laugh. So it was actually quite refreshing to see that most of the cafeteria wasn't joining in. It just seemed to be him and his mate. Lips him, the bully, with like a tray, like a food tray, like whacks him several times and does a lot of damage, but his rage just comes out. Also, the handicapped girl we've seen in other scenes. She's actually, we've seen her with Levon's girlfriend, sort of doing her up, sort of thing. So again, sense of community, this sense that everyone's connected in the town, which we've had throughout. But anyway, he gets upset. Obviously, he gets in a bit of trouble, and then his mum talks to him later, and he just gets really upset. And that's when she asks him about it with your father. What's he up to? Is he doing it again? She sort of phrases it like that, and he breaks down, gets really upset. Then asks him, is it the same girl, basically? So definitely draws some suspicion on the father, and could he be connected to what's been going on? The Dylan side of the plot in this episode, because we get a scene with his girlfriend who we haven't seen for a while, but she starts asking Dylan about the night of Aaron's murder, because he was at home with her around the time, because obviously they were out in the woods. Later on, at the time when she would have been killed, Dylan wasn't around, according to her. And so she starts asking him, well, where were you that night? And Dylan gets all sensitive and mad. It's like, just get out of it, basically. Like, shuts down the conversation. Him with Aaron's friend. From the conversation, at least, it appears as though Aaron's friend has been lying to the police for Dylan, at least covering his tracks. And then they go over to the house, to Aaron's house, and they break in, and they're obviously like getting rid of evidence, because they get her diaries, bunch of other stuff. Dylan actually finds the money that she was putting aside for DJ's ear operation, puts it in his pocket, so I think he's maybe gonna himself, but maybe it's a similar idea where it's things that could be linked back to them. But we later see them, burning stuff in the fire, including the diary entries. Mare's friend and her husband, they've been asked to adopt DJ. And think about it, so where that leads could be interesting. Talk about the big stuff at the end of the episode with Colin and with Mare, some big personal stuff. First of all, they go on their first date in this episode, which doesn't go very well. It's this standard Mare sort of closing Colin down type thing. So it appears as though she's decided on him over Richard, at least. So maybe Guy Pearce now is done in the thing. Obviously, pretty busy Hollywood actor, so maybe his role in this show is done. Beautiful scenes with them in this episode. Well, because Mare just wants to talk about the case all the time, which is typical Mare, and Colin's trying to move things on. And definitely some black comedy in this, because it's like he's like, all you want to do about is talk about the case, and Mare's like, no, we talked about how you had a stutter as a kid for like 11 minutes, which is very insensitive, but there is something kind of funny about the line as well. But anyway, we move on later, and they sort of start to connect again, and it begins with Colin admitting that the case previously never actually solved. They set up evidence that the case would be like solved, and they would pin it on someone. And well, suddenly, another thing they've got in common, because of their setting up the drug Slime for Mare, where she says, what they don't realise is that we're up or as corrupt as the system, but the show and the characters in some ways, how there's all these secrets within the town and the various characters, but at the same time, the police, or certainly Mare, in some ways, she's not really any better. She has the flaws as well. And Mare is just saying, my life is such a mess, and I just figured you don't want that in your life. You're not ready for it. And I think that's probably why it's a significant coming together with what Colin explains to her. And then he's actually the most forward he's ever been. He just at the end of the scene, he directly kisses her, and she's obviously into it. But it's a beautiful moment, magic, poignant type moment. I wonder if there's going to be more to what Colin told her about the past. As Mare's been, using a source to witnesses and people who worked on the street as well. A prostitute who was attacked seemingly by the same person, kidnapped Ellie and Missy, and she gives them some details. It's a white man with a beard, and he was driving like a work type van. Gives them a rough description, so they sort of find out every address that has a van like that sort of linked to it in the area. So we see them going around their houses, and they finally come to this place. A little detail, because there's a scene where we see Ellie sort of nursing Missy after she's been like thrown in with her, and she says that there was actually another girl who was there months ago, Hillary I think her name was, and she reveals that the guy got her pregnant, and why he got rid of her. Maybe these two plots still could be connected. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean he killed Irene, although it's possible. Colin finally come to his house, the place, the guy. So we obviously know this is the guy, and we've never seen him before. So that's something. I was a bit surprised that not the killer, but the kidnapper at least was someone we didn't know or we'd not seen up to. I sort of half expected it to be, oh my god, it's him, that sort of moment. They come in, they start talking to him. And one thing I really like about this scene, it's really well shot, but I also like just the look of it, and that, it's pretentious to say, but the architecture of the scene, because it's in this sort of small sort of like space, and the way the scenes plays out is the girls are obviously like down in the basement, but they start to hear voices, and they start to hear, obviously it's Mare and Colin talking to the guy, and so they start banging on pipes to try and get them attention. And I sort of love the fact that it doesn't really take long for them to be heard, because it's this really dank sort of rundown place where there's, the walls aren't very thick, and it's very sort of grubby, and yeah, obviously it's the sort of place where sound like reverberates quite easy, so they just start wailing away on these pipes, and eventually the pipes in the room start shaking, so that obviously tips them off. We suddenly get this tense high action sort of scene where he shoots Colin. Colin is shot and appears to be dead, and Mare, well, dodges the main threat, but she actually gets shot in the hand. And then we get this sort of chase, and this closing scene is so well directed, like the chase through this sort of house and this room, her sort of dodging about, and eventually, finding the girls, and it's a really just well directed scene, and again, great acting from Kate Winslet, the way she reacts to everything, and then sells at the end, her sort of what she's been through. It's obviously, again, why you hire her for this big role. So shooting him in self defense, like she runs away from him, and he's obviously shooting at her, and eventually she hits him. Another little detail I liked when he was trying to find her is that he could actually track her presence, or where she was in the house, because he's got one of those phones where you can, it obviously hooks up to the cameras in the house, so he could actually see her on the phone. So that was a nice little like modern technology type of touch. But it's a really good end scene, really tense, and I don't know, maybe blows my Colin theory out the window from last week, because he appears to be dead now, at least. So, it doesn't totally, because if it's someone else, it's too neat to then sort of kill him off in the scene. But it's obviously partly tragic, because Mare and Colin sort of got together, and they're a great relationship. I've been totally into their relationship, so it's definitely that beat of they finally connected. They kissed each other, and then they go off and he gets killed. So definitely going for the tragedy stuff he was talking about is interesting. And then you've got the stuff with Dylan, you've got the stuff with obviously Mare's friend's son, who does really well, and which this episode did well actually, was mixing the comedy with the darker stuff. And so I think another thing that makes this episode so good. It's a really well-rounded episode because we do get some nice comedic touches. So a couple of examples, and I think Mare's mother Helen has definitely been a standout when it comes to the comedy lines, because earlier in the episode, the neighbour, Carol, her name is, she like dies in a car crash, has a heart attack, and Helen makes this crack about she died because of Cheerios. She had a heart attack because of Cheerios, which is a great line. Go to the wake. The husband needs to practically shout to get like everyone's attention, but then in the middle of this wake, he announces that his wife was having an affair, and he just needed to get off his check. But lo and behold, it's not only that she was having an affair, she was only having an affair with Helen, of all people. And he says her surname so that people know who she was, and she's obviously right there. And Mare's reaction is absolutely priceless. It's one of the highlights of the episode. In the car, like, she's just cracking up, and yeah, Helen's trying to talk it away. Well, affair isn't quite the right word, that sort of thing. What sort of an idiot announces that as his own wife's wake? And she's got a point there, but it's just one of these great scenes that just feels so at home in this drama, and the sort of black like humour of it, and the comedy of this sort of small town type thing where these quirky things realistically could sort of happen. But Mare's reaction and her just cracking up in the car was a great scene as well, and very entertaining. I think also for Kate Winslet, that was probably a big relief, because she might have smiled once or twice, or half smiled. Maybe she gave off a little laugh in a scene somewhere, I don't know. But obviously for like pretty much all of this series, she's been very like deadpan and very reserved. So she's not had a chance to let rip and like really laugh like that. So I actually think probably when Kate Winslet saw that in the script, she was like punching the air. It's like, yes, god damn it, I finally get to laugh like properly. And it's that sort of thing. It actually feels odd when you see it, because the character has been like the total opposite of that. But it's a great moment. Worth pointing out those lighter touches, because I think they really add to the overall stuff and the feel of the show. Because boy, does it go to dark places, but there's a lot of good humour as well, and I think they get a good balance, certainly in this episode. So great stuff. Really standout episode. That's Mare of Easttown for the week. Kind of feels a bit like this year's Undoing, I think, where it's always solid at the start and you were enjoying it enough, but it's only get up to a certain point where it really takes on this life of its own, and it's feeling like really satisfying as a result. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What are your theories? Because this episode certainly presents so many possibilities with other stuff. First of all, do you think the killer is someone different from this guy who obviously kidnapped the girls? Is there any link, do you think? I mean, obviously the stuff with the baby that's mentioned does have a different name. That's another thing. Hillary, her name was. But I don't know if that could just be a given name. Sign of a pattern with him, that maybe he brings girls back and sort of gets them impregnated. So, what do you think about the Dylan stuff? What do you think's going on about there? Stuff to chew on for the week. But I'll be back soon. Like and subscribe as always. Share it out on social media because that gets the channel more attention. And also you can donate a bit to my PayPal account if you want to support the channel another way. So I'll put the link in the description. But thanks guys. See you again soon. Goodbye.